But we'll start at 25, Nebraska. This is kind of a hot take, I guess, on our part, or at least people have told us that in the comment section. But we'll see this weekend, right? I think Nebraska is. We knew they were a top 25 caliber defense last year. We'll see if the offense has gotten better, like we think that it has, right? And it's going to kind of depend on Dylan Raiola, but I think it's really going to depend on that run game there. Arkansas, we're going to talk about them a lot, so we'll kind of save our breath on that. We've got them in the 24 spot. Arizona got at 23. This was a team that I had in a list of teams kind of to the side where I was kind of choosing those last few spots. And the way Arizona came back last week in that game made it look like it wasn't a game, scored a bunch of points, kind of, I guess, persuaded me. It's early in the season, guys. We'll have to just kind of see on that one. I'm not sure. Iowa State, I'm kind of the same way, man. I'm kind of wait and see. I mean, we'll learn a little something this weekend, I guess, but Iowa State is a team that returns a lot of talent from last year. And then Clemson, I didn't think it was fair to drop Clemson out of the top 25. I'm going to be honest with you. Clemson played better than I thought they would. I'm just going to be dead honest with you. The more I look back at it, I just feel like Clemson's defense is better than what I gave them credit for going into the Georgia week. The defensive line especially. I don't think they're crazy deep or anything, but I think that starting lineup for Clemson's defense is really good. I just, I think they kind of ran into a buzzsaw with Georgia as far as, Georgia's defense. And, I'm not a huge Cade Klubnik fan, but I think they're worthy of being a top 25 team. And in my eyes, Mason, they might have worked their way back into the ACC championship conversation, or at least trying to get to Charlotte. I don't know about beating Miami. That might be a stretch, but Clemson, in my eyes, is a team that I was not looking at as an ACC contender, and maybe I am a little bit more now.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, picking up where you left off with Clemson, they really had Georgia where they wanted them in the first half. Not a ton of points being scored, made a couple of big plays, but couldn't quite capitalize whenever they flipped the field, and really some punting issues. Right, it seemed like Georgia every single time that Clemson punted, Georgia was starting from their 20 or 30-yard line. So really, the special teams didn't do them any favors. I mean, in a game against Georgia, everything has to be perfect. Every yard counts, and the punter didn't really help them out a ton there. And credit the return game from Georgia as well. But when I look at Clemson and I look at Georgia, right, that game in the first half was razor thin. Like there was a razor thin difference in the first half, and both teams were playing really well in that first half. If you duplicate the first half, right, there are a lot of teams now that I look at Georgia and I say, well, it seems like now Georgia could get got by a lot of teams because of how the first half looked. Now it's the first half not just of a game but it's the first half of the entire season. So I don't expect Georgia to play that tight, for the rest of the season. But my point is, there are a lot of teams that Georgia has to face that I think are probably stronger than Clemson for the rest of the year. And it's fair to question whether or not, Georgia can actually run the gauntlet and go undefeated this year. But anyways, back to Clemson. I'm with you. I think that they could they could end up making the ACC championship. I'm not counting them out just because of a 31-point loss to Georgia. I thought that they were pretty competitive, and there were some things that I really liked. Can the offense get better after this week? I think that they have a lot to draw on. And then really the last four, 22 through 25, all of these teams have a lot of potential. I think that they're in this top 25 due to their potential, not so much what they've proven on the field. Arizona, you can say, a lot of their success carried over from last season into week one. So maybe you kind of put them there. And we're almost kind of holding on to Arizona and wondering if they're going to fall out. The other three, Iowa State, Arkansas, and Nebraska, we're wondering if they can improve on last week and get a little bit better. A lot of potential with those three teams. A lot of really good quarterback play out of those three teams. So excited to see where they go. We'll get into Arkansas and Nebraska here in a minute. But Iowa State, I mean, Rocco Becht seems like the real deal. And I'm really excited to see them play Iowa because Iowa scored 40 points this past week and kind of stayed out of our top 25 still. But I think that's a really good team, and this is going to be a really good game this week. And I'm sad we're not breaking that one down, but obviously we can only do so many at a time, and they did not make the cut this week. So, but we can go on to the next slide.
Hey, well, go ahead and start talking us through that slide, Mason. I'm
Yeah.
adding I'm adding the link that you can follow to join the show into the show description, and I'll also put it in the YouTube comments, the YouTube comment live chat there. So you can either get it either way and come join us on the show. Yeah, go ahead, Mason.
Yeah. So starting off with number 20, we got LSU coming off of a tough loss, I would say, to USC. I don't know that we gained a ton of information on LSU. I think it was a hard fought battle. Just want to see the discipline kind of, you know, raise, I guess, and to see them play with a little bit more of a sense of discipline. Kansas looked really good. I mean, they went out there, scored a bunch of points, played at nobody, you know, but anxious to see what they do with Jalen Daniels this year. I'm super high on him if he's able to stay healthy. Another team that scored a bunch of points is Auburn. Auburn looked like the complete opposite of what they were last year, except they also played really good defense. But you know, played or nobody. I think the end of the game was actually they actually played shorter quarters the last two quarters of the game, which is interesting. But it seems like they've got some things figured out on the offense for Auburn over there on the Plains. Kansas State, we're kind of just holding steady to see them play a competitive game. I think that they're still very much in contention for the Big 12. Same with Oklahoma State. I mean, they're very much in contention for the Big 12. They got a really tough test with Arkansas this week, and I'm really excited to see how the defense holds up against Arkansas because it seems like Bobby Petrino's got the offense for Arkansas rolling here with Taylor Green.
Yep, absolutely, man. I'll just kind of give you my 2 cents on these few real quick, and then we'll keep it moving, guys. But LSU's, I think, a pretty good football team. I don't think they're a bad football team at all because they lost to USC. I feel like USC fully showed up to play that football game, and like I said, I think Blake Baker is going to have these guys. It looks like he's going to have these guys in a lot better position to make plays on defense, and that was literally LSU's only problem last year. They were first in the country in offense, pretty much, in just about every category, at least top 10 in every category, and they were bottom 25 out of 133 teams all year in defense. So, and they have NFL talent on that defense. That's why it doesn't make any sense. So, as long as they can figure out some answers on the defensive line, which is, you know, those guys don't grow on trees. That's a big question to answer. But if they can answer a question there and figure out a way to avoid some injuries and not get their depth exploited, they're going to be okay. They're going to be all right. Kansas, yeah, we'll see. We got time that we're going to be able to talk Kansas later this year, so I'll save it for that. But just the ceiling for this team is certainly top 25, and it could be even like top 15ish if they reach their potential. It's all going to depend on Daniel's health there in Kansas. And Auburn, I got a lot of faith in the four horsemen, and that's what they're calling all these freshmen that they've got. Mason, you may have mentioned that. I was trying to figure out how to post that in the description. I finally did figure it out, thank God. But I think Auburn is on the right track. Piece by piece. Peyton Thorne is not, Joe Montana or anything, but I think he's going to be able to get it done. I think they're going to be able to. They're not going to be in playoff contention this year, but I think that they can. I think that they can be a very respectable 8-4, 9-3 football team this year. Maybe beat somebody they're not supposed to, and I think that would be a really, really good year for Auburn. And I think they're going to hover around in this 18 to 25 spot pretty much all year long. And Kansas State, we're going to find out more about them. I know all you Kansas State fans out there are. I've got some questions about the defense. We're going to see. We haven't figured it out yet. I'm ready to see this quarterback in a real game, a big game, and Kansas State is definitely going to have some good games there in the Big 12 this year. And then Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is like, I'm trying to figure out if they're a Big 12 contender or I know they're a contender, but they're right on the fringe of my pick to go, to the Big 12 championship game. So naturally, this weekend, watching them host Arkansas is going to be something that I'm more excited about this matchup than some of these other ones. I just have to say, this is one of my favorite games of the weekend. Arkansas at Oklahoma State. I cannot wait to see it. Let's
And
move
then
on. Let's
starting off with
go
number
for it.
15, we got USC. They come away as victors in the matchup. In the what was that? I forget what it was called now. The one out in Vegas, anyways, the bowl game out in Vegas on Sunday there. But anyways, come out as victors in that game and move up in our rankings because of it. I mean, it was a hard fought battle. We saw some good things on the defensive side of the football. Finally, it seems like they've got another quarterback in Miller Moss. The Lincoln Riley just can't have a bad quarterback year. It seems like his entire career as a head coach has been filled with Heisman caliber quarterbacks. So funny how that works. If you coach really good offense and you run an offense that quarterbacks want to play in, it seems like you get really good quarterbacks in your system. I don't understand how that works. It's amazing. Speaking of good offenses, I think Oklahoma might have themselves a good one and a good quarterback in Jackson Arnold. I liked what he did in this game. He's a smooth operator. Did get sacked 4 times, but a lot of that was due to offensive line play. And we told you before week 1 that Oklahoma was going to struggle on offensive line. Well, then they lost their starting center. And yeah, that doesn't help. They got like a walk-on playing center in SEC play. That's probably not going to work out. So let's see if they can get healthy on the offensive line and figure some things out. But that's going to be a glaring weakness for Oklahoma moving forward, and we're going to have to keep track of that. Michigan got a big game against the Horns coming up this week. I thought that they looked a little lackluster on offense, but the defense is right where I thought they would be. It's natural for them to, in week 1, with really a whole new offense, to be a little bit behind the 8 ball when it comes to that side of the football. And I'm excited to see what they do this week against Texas. I don't know. We'll get into the breakdown here. I don't want to bury the lead too much, but I'm curious to see if their offense is good enough to challenge Texas's defense and vice versa. It's kind of good on good and bad on bad in that matchup. So we'll break that down here in a minute, though. Missouri looked absolutely explosive on offense. I thought that they were better than advertised, which we knew that they would have a good offense, but I think that they kind of even proved me not wrong, but proved to be better than what I expected on offense. And then the defensive side of the football, they lose a first-round pick on the defensive line, and they're still flying around the football. Really like what I saw out of the Tigers. Penn State, Nittany Lions, seems like they can finally at least try to throw some deep balls. It wasn't pretty, but they took some shots downfield. I think that Drew Aller really needs that experience, needs those long throw XP points, and he needs that in his repertoire as a quarterback. I think he's got all the skills, but do we see Colton Nickey, the new offensive coordinator for Penn State, continue to challenge Drew Aller to throw the ball downfield? And can Aller make those throws, right? I'm anxious to watch what he does, but I think it was pretty encouraging what we saw out of the Nittany Lions in week 1.
Yeah, I'll start with Penn State there since you ended there. I like everything. It's the same stuff with Penn State. It seems like every single year over the last few years. I like everything I see except the wide receiver room. They lost a lot in the wide receiver room. They didn't replace it. In this past week, I went and looked at some of their player stats and things, and I believe there was 2 or 3 wide receivers that had catches the whole game, and it was 2 other running backs. I'm not saying players altogether, but wide receivers, I believe it was only 2 of them. If not, maybe it was 3. But the other 2 guys that got receptions were running backs, and the other 2 guys after that were tight ends. So it's like I'm just I'm worried for Penn State. I mean, if an injury happens, for the love of God, in the wide receiver room, I mean, what I don't know what they're going to do. So, um, I love the prospect of this team. I see the national media has got them, within playoff contention, and obviously we do too. We've got them inside the top 12 here. I'm not sure how it all shakes out, but um, that they're probably going to be good enough at running the football and playing defense to be right there in the conversation this year. And what I'm saying may be a moot point as far as that goes, but as far as winning a Big Ten championship or winning a national championship, I feel like Penn State has got uh, almost an irreparable flaw just an irreparable clog in the system there. Unfortunately, really like Missouri. We'll see more about them. They're not having any game worth talking about this week, but um, you know, return some really good receivers. Brady Cook. I can't wait to see what they're about. I think they're really good. They got the easiest schedule in the SEC as well, which kind of gives them a nice little path into that top 15ish. We'll see how they do this year if they can avoid almost every team has a loss they're not supposed to every year. So we'll see if they can avoid that. Michigan, we're about to talk about. I'm not gonna spill the beans yet, but you guys know what's up with Michigan. Good defense, a lot of questions on offense. We're gonna talk about it here in just a few minutes. Oklahoma, I like a lot that I see with Oklahoma. The defense is the best that it's been in years, guys. It's the best that it has been in years. Unfortunately for Oklahoma, they come into the SEC in a year where I don't think this is the best offensive line group that they've ever had. I know that it's not. The injury this past weekend at center accentuates a weakness that was already there. As you said, Mason, you got pretty much your third guy up, at the center position. I'm hearing that the original starter is supposed to be getting healthy, but your second stringer there sprains his ankle. So, a sprained ankle on a 340-pound or whatever, 300-plus-pound guy is it takes a while to heal, guys. That's a lot of weight coming down on an ankle. So, we'll have to just kind of monitor that situation. Oklahoma is not going to be tested this week as they've got Houston, so they're going to be able to handle that. No problem. And then USC, we've already talked about. USC's defense is much improved. Do they have the depth to sustain it throughout the year? I don't know about that. But we'll just kind of have to watch the injury situation. Their will to play defense and want to play defense, it seemed to be there, and in a way that I haven't seen it for USC in a while. So I'm really excited about the prospect of USC in the Big Ten this year and actually having a defense that's worth watching. I don't think this is going to be an outside the top 75 defense. I think USC can be top 40, top 50 probably. 40 might be pushing it, but they can be top 50 this year in defense, and that will really go a long way for an offense that I think has yet to even blossom. We don't even know how good this USC offense can be yet. There was a ton of new receivers out there, man. All their guys they counted on last year on offense were gone, and they put up hella yards. I know it wasn't a great LSU defense or anything, but you have faith in Lincoln Riley to field an offense for sure. You want to take us through this next slide here, Mason? What you think?
Yeah, I mean, start with number 10. I thought Utah, looks like the Utah of 2022 this past year.
Yeah, they do.
Cam Rising's a big part of that. Outscored their opponent 55-0. And I think it was Southern Utah that they faced. So, it's another week one game, non-conference game. But I thought they looked explosive. We saw Kete, and I don't know why I'm just not going to be able to pronounce this dude's name. Katie, I don't know. The tight end. Queethy. Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
He's Queethin now. All right. So, he looked amazing. He looks like the best tight end in the country. I really like the upside of him. I thought the offensive line should have been tested more, or I guess we just don't know. We don't know kind of what to expect out of the offensive line. It is a question for me, but I like the dudes that they have. I feel like the defense is in question a little bit. I don't necessarily know, if they're going to be able to replace some of those dudes that they lost, but We'll have to wait and see. I think it's fair though to move them up to 10 because of the explosiveness that we saw on offense. That was the biggest question mark, at least last year, that we had out of Utah, and they answered that this year. I think that they're going to play with a physicality up front on both sides of the football. Um, add in Dorian Singer to the mix, and I think they're going to be all right this year. Um, Miami, look, what they did in Gainesville was nothing short of an absolute beatdown. That was very impressive. Um, it's still kind of hard to fathom that they won that handedly. I had the under in that game, thought it would hit, but when a team puts up 41 points on a 50 something point spread, it kind of ruins that. So I was really impressed with Miami. I know Florida is bad, but the fact that Cam Ward went into that game and played with the confidence that he did in Gainesville, I think it's saying something. I think it's saying that he's going to deserve to be in the Heisman conversation, at least in the early part of this season. Tennessee, and it's really funny that we have these two teams 8 and 9 because there are so many parallels that we can draw, and maybe we'll save that for another video. But Tennessee and Miami are two very similar teams, explosive quarterbacks, really good along the defensive lines of scrimmage and the offensive line of scrimmage. But I really liked what I saw out of Tennessee. We're going to be breaking the Tennessee team down here in a minute, as they get ready for their upcoming game this week. But I really like what I saw out of Tennessee. I think that their offense is rolling, and anxious to see what they do with NC State. Alabama, number 7. They're in the top 10 again. You know what I mean? It's an Alabama team that had a lot of questions coming into this year with Kalen DeBoer taking over as the head coach. What was he going to be able to do on offense? Well, it looked like a really good offense to me. Um, I really enjoyed what I saw out of them. I thought that the wide receivers played way better than I expected them to. That was the biggest question mark on this offense for us, is the playmakers on the perimeter. What are they going to do when they step up against other competition? We'll have to wait and see. Texas, we'll get to them here in a moment, but I thought that they.
Y'all let me know what we're looking like. I guess I can pull it up too real quick.
Yeah, it's still
The glories of going live. Gotta love it. Just lovely. Let's go check this out. Nope, we're not frozen anymore. So I just went and checked it. I just heard the same words that just came out of my mouth. So we are good to go now. Let's go on to this next slide here. Thank you, Quentin. I appreciate your feedback on that, buddy. I do appreciate it. Cool. Let's quickly get through the rest of this. Hopefully, you two will cooperate with us. And you know what? We've had several technical difficulties today, guys. We'll keep working on it, right? That's all we can do. We got to keep going. We got to save up our money. We got to get a little better equipment, and we're going to be able to, fix and troubleshoot some of these issues. Let's go through these final 5 real quick. Notre Dame, big win. Texas A&M. Notre Dame's got a hell of a defense, guys. We talked about it all week last week, and then they put it on display. Really, really good defense. Do they have a downfield threat? That is yet to be seen, but they've got a lot of time to figure it out, get some of those wide receivers worked into this offense, and more importantly, get the new quarterback worked into the offense. I think he was the first one to come off the field and tell his, offensive coordinator there on the sideline, hey, it wasn't pretty, but, Den Brock will take it. It was a win in a really, really hostile environment. And this is a defense-led football team. We'll see if the offense can kind of bring up the tail end for them. And I think that'll kind of that's going to write the story for Notre Dame this season for sure. Oregon struggled, guys, and they dropped down a little bit in our top 25 just because of the fact, we got to keep it real. I mean, that wasn't a beautiful thing that we saw, scoring, what was it, 24-14 or 24-10 or whatever they won. It was, Dylan Gabriel absolutely went off. But, how do you throw for almost 400 yards and score less than 30 points? I don't really understand that against Idaho. That was just puzzling. And to be honest with you, I haven't had time this week to go back and watch it. I've been so busy with all the other matchups, but That is one that I've got bookmarked and saved to my watch later there on YouTube. Because I'm gonna have to go back and watch that whenever Oregon's got a big game coming up and figure out what happened there. But they've got Boise State this weekend, and Boise State's better than Idaho, so we'll see if they can do any better against the team from across the Idaho State there. Ole Miss just absolutely laid a whooping on whoever it was they played, the school, Helen Keller School for the Blind and Deaf or whatever it was. Um, great. I like Ole Miss. I love the prospect of them. They're going to be a really good football team this year. Newsflash, I think everybody knows that at this point. Offensive line is my question for them, and then depth along the lines of scrimmage, I guess, really is kind of my question. How will they hold up, around the line of scrimmage? That's welcome to the SEC. That's what we're going to talk about. Ohio State, I think that my thoughts haven't changed on Ohio State, I guess. And Georgia is kind of the same way. Georgia is the most well-rounded football team in America, I think, right now. And I think Ohio State is right there with them. So naturally, they're number one and number two. Georgia has, at this point, the best win of the year, as far as a dominating victory over a, ranked team. And they're going to stay at the number one spot here until they give us a reason not to be, and then they will certainly be moved accordingly. What do you think about the top five, Mason? And we'll get into our breakdowns, previews, predictions, and I think we got a college football playoff bracket. Is that right? Did I see that?
Yeah. We'll touch base on that and just kind of update everybody on our bracket and if we think if it's moved at all based off of the week. But looking at the top five and really the top 10, I mean, if you look at this season in a scope, right after week one, after week zero, the top 10 is pretty interchangeable. I mean, realistically, I think Georgia's pretty clearly the number one team right now, but I could see that changing pretty easily. I mean, after watching the first half of the Clemson game, I could see that changing. I'm not such a biased homer that I think that Georgia's the number one team in the country and isn't going to be moved. I could definitely see some wavering being had there, and Ohio State. I mean, you can look at the first half of their game and wonder what the heck happened to their offense. That's a big question mark to me. Ole Miss did nothing to disprove them as being a playoff contender and a top five team. I thought they had a really good game and really clean game. Just kind of went unnoticed because of who they played, but that's what you want in those no-name games is to kind of fly under the radar. They did score a bunch of points, but yeah, no real news there. The Oregon game, I did get to go back and watch this one, and to me, I thought Idaho did some really nice things. First of all, like you watch these guys play, and like sometimes some non-power 5 or power 4 opponents are created different than others, and I think Idaho's a pretty good little program there. Not saying that they should have only lost by what they did to Oregon, but when you look at how they played. Came up with a really big fourth down stop at one point. Came up with a huge turnover in the red zone. There was a lot of things that were just kind of weird in this ball game, and Oregon didn't let it phase them too much. I thought, statistically on offense, they had a great game. There were just a few plays that were unfortunate, didn't go their way, and it affected the score, of this game. But I still think that Oregon is a top 4 team for sure. And then Notre Dame, I think you could have Notre Dame as low as 10, and I'd be fine with it because of how they played against Texas A&M. It was a tough environment to play at Kyle Field. That is a strong defense. I do believe that Texas A&M is a really good defense, but when you look at the offensive explosivity of Notre Dame, I still have questions. Like you said, who's the playmaker? Who's going to be that guy? I didn't get any answers on the offensive line for Notre Dame, but that was a really tough D line that they faced. And yeah, I mean, and I thought Riley Leonard looked about the same. I mean, couldn't really stretch the ball vertically for the most part, but played like a gamer and ran the ball when he needed to, and didn't do anything to take them out of contention in this football game. Just want to see a little bit more explosiveness from the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
Yeah,
and then
absolutely.
moving on to our playoff bracket, which we did before the season started, right? I just thought it would be interesting to kind of do this week to week and just see if anything's changed, right? Looking at it, I mean, a lot of I mean, a lot of these YouTube channels and media personnel had Florida State in their brackets. I mean, we saw it all during the preseason, and they're already. I mean, their bracket's already busted. Technically, ours isn't busted. I think Texas A&M is probably the one you circle right now and say, yeah, that may be a little bit tough for them to get 10 wins with that offense, with Wigman playing the way that he did. I don't know about Texas A&M, but to me, I mean, everyone else here is fair game. They're still in play here, and I think that as just like a side note, it's just something we could kind of mention and update as we see fit.
Yeah, I mean nothing's really changed for me here. Texas A&M, like you said, that was one that I was kind of on the fence about anyway. Because we talked about it. Texas and Texas A&M are going to get to that game at the end of the year, and we both feel like that's the game that's going to kind of decide who gets the third loss or who's out of the playoff there. So that's just kind of how we feel about it. We're about to talk some Texas football right now, as a matter of fact. So let's jump into that. That has been our top 25 and college football playoff updates for you for going into week 2. What a good week it was, week 1.